Good afternoon and welcome back to the Kenton Theatre here in Henley-on-Thames. This next session is being hosted by Michelle Myers of Wright Media and welcomes back Markus Grindel from Conde Nast, who was with us earlier today. Just a couple of housekeeping things. Please make sure that you do ask questions. We'll probably run through most of those at the end. There's a Q&A box below you and the chat box. Do interact with all the other people on the meetings hub and make sure that your details are up to date so that you can make yourself look as best as you can. So Wright Media is a full-service global content licensing agency. It partners with traditional publishers, digital media companies, and large content creators to strengthen their relationships with brands and consumers by creating breakthrough licensing programs. Michelle joined Wright Media in February of 2020 after 25 years in the publishing industry. Most recently, she was Chief Revenue Officer at Condé Nast Brides and Lucky Magazine and was the founding publisher of People Style Watch. Welcome, Michelle, and over to you.
Oh, thank you, John, for the kind introduction, and welcome everyone to our session today, Driving Incremental Revenue, the Power of Licensing Your Existing Content. And it is my pleasure to be joined by our guest speaker, Markus Grindel, Managing Director, Global Brand Licensing, Condé Nast International. He leads Condé Nast global licensing team responsible for developing and managing all media and product licenses, branded restaurants, residences, and any future form of brand licensing which the company is exploring. Markus joined Condé Nast in 2017 from Playboy, where he was Executive Vice President and Managing Director at Playboy Enterprises, Inc., and Managing Director of its International Licensing Group. Welcome, Markus. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Michelle. Thank you for that very comprehensive and kind introduction.
Markus, before we get started, I would love to share with our audience today a little bit about what will be covered in the session. We'll be explaining what content licensing is through live examples, show you how to use your content, your existing content to generate additional revenue, dive into why it is such a hot topic today and how the economy has shifted, explain how licensing content stands alone against ad revenue, and discuss the value of partnering with an agency. So Markus, to begin, I'd like to ask you, why is licensing an important piece to the overall content strategy at Condé Nast?
I mean, as I said this morning in the first session of the day, licensing in general is a great way to diversify your revenue as a company, create a network of partners, experts, and interact with your consumers through different avenues, not necessarily part of your core business. And as I said this morning, given the nature, it's not a huge revenue driver, but certainly a great profit contributor at a margin competing that is sort of the old good yield, or the yield of the old good print ads. Content licensing in particular is important to us as it allows us to monetize assets a second, a third, a fourth, and even more time. It's a value creation beyond our core business, giving content a second life and the value beyond the monetization through advertising, through the normal advertising on our site or in our magazine, or circulation or traffic on our sites. Though I think for our conversation, we have to make a important distinction that when you talk about content licensing, for us, content licensing means the breadth of content licensing in the sense of partnering with platforms to syndicate our content, versus what we're talking here, which is content licensing in the sense of endorsement and seal licensing, which is a significant part of our content licensing operation.
That's great. Markus, you've spent the last 4 years really making it a focus for the US. What are your thoughts on content licensing as a revenue stream internationally, and why do you feel it's important for the UK? And the last part of that question is, do you see the importance in other international markets as well? And that multi-part question.
That's fine. Let me go through those individual points of your question. I mean, licensing a quote for commercial purposes, or licensing your logo for marketing purposes isn't a new thing. We all grew up with those ads as seen on TV or as seen in XYZ magazine, those old kind of marketing endorsement campaigns. And Condé Nast, like many of our competitors, have licensed quotes and logos sort of spread sort of here and there over time, and sometimes gave those assets away for free as part of larger commercial agreements. I think working with Wright's Media sort of over the last 3-4 years has not only put a real value on this form of licensing and a perspective that this is a standalone business that has its value, but also structured sort of the business for us and freed up resources, quite frankly, on our end. I have a team of 3 people focusing on content licensing together with your team, and they're generating a considerable profit to the company. So to your second part of the question about the UK, I think replicating the success we have had in the US to some of our international markets just felt natural. I mean, why not? And starting with an English-speaking market made most sense operational, given that our content licensing team, like you, sits in New York. Also given that looking at the demand we have seen from the various markets, it seems the UK is sort of the largest opportunity right now, leaving alone that English quotes travel way better across markets than other languages that are not as common. That said, I strongly believe there's an opportunity to increase and diversify revenues for all our markets, not just the UK, not just the US, by using content licensing. In fact, the other day I saw an advertisement on YouTube here in Germany that was using a quote from our German GQ magazine, including the logo. This is a young sort of apparel startup, so I assume they thought they can have that for free, and it wasn't only our quote, it was also from some of our competitors. But that shows me that other markets are picking really up on the value that these endorsements bring to their product, not only in English-speaking markets, but also in other markets like Germany. And you and I have talked about Germany before, so.
Yes. And Markus, you make a really interesting distinction between syndication and content licensing in terms of accolades and awards. And that is a perfect transition for us into some examples that we put together today for our audience to really understand the difference between the syndication and what we do to help brands. My computer's a little slow, to get brands into a business of accolade licensing. And we have some examples if this would forward. Here we go. Sorry for that. Here is a TV example. Markus, I'm going to play the clip, and then if you can share a little bit about this clip, that'd be great.
If I remember correctly, that was from a sort of year-long license deal with Beats, and I think they bought it for the use in an Amazon campaign, and actually it was a global deal. And I think that the specific advertising that we just saw was actually UK. At least it says John Lewis underneath it. And if I remember correctly, that was a nice high 5-figure deal that you guys managed to secure there for us. This one here is a good example of how a brand can utilize the license that they get from you through us or from us through you on their Instagram stories. There are 2 different franchises here. One is GQ. Now, one is the pull quote from Wired recommends, which is the Colgate Hum toothbrush. Again, a pull quote plus the logo, and again, I think it was sort of a good five-figure deal. The other one on the right-hand side is a pull quote from GQ Best Stuff Review, which is sort of an ongoing franchise with one-off reviews here and there. Again, a nice five-figure deal that we were able to secure with you guys together.
Thank you. I'm going to play this Insta story GIF. Hold on. That the client created as well using GQ.
Cool. I actually haven't seen that yet, so that's
really cool, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's a good use of the sort of the logo within the environment, the brand environment of the client, which I think is very helpful for clients, that they sort of can create their own world around their product and their marketing campaigns.
Yes, and I always love when I see outdoor creative as well. I think it's a powerful way to use accolade licensing, and this was a great example that Beats did for Wired as well.
Absolutely. I mean, again, that's, I think, a pull quote from the Wired Recommends review. In general, I think Beats is has become a very good client over the years, and they come back again and again when we actually review some of their products, and have sort of seen the value that our quotes, our logo, our brands can bring to them in order to endorse them in a rather competitive earbud headphone market. When you think about it, usually those bring out technical features, and this that really stands out by just having the endorsement of a technology magazine.
It helps them drive sales, that's for sure. And this last example from Glamour is really more of a web usage, correct, Markus?
Yeah, it's a web usage, and I think it's a usage on within conjunction of an e-commerce platform. That was from the Glamour 2020 Beauty Awards, so this year, which is an annual franchise. And again, we, through the program with you, allow the brands to sort of use that seal on their product, not in this case, but on their marketing for e-commerce, which we know from research, and obviously we share that with brand drives sales, and they all see an uptake in sales.
No, that's great. You know, we've talked a lot about the revenue generating power of content licensing, but could you speak a little bit about other ways in which it's impacted the brands more than just revenue?
Absolutely. I mean, it increased brand exposure at no cost, our brand exposure at no cost. And we just saw that the Beats advertisement, the advertisement on that bus stop, outside display advertisement. What do we remember of that advertising? Obviously the product, but the other thing we remember is Wired. So that's free brand exposure, and fan brand exposure that we get paid for. Actually thinking about it, maybe we shouldn't talk too much about that. Might give clients a wrong idea. So no, but it is a great increase of our brand exposure and no cost in areas or on platforms where we might not usually be. And obviously the use of our seals or pull quotes also links back to our content, and therefore in cases drive traffic. So there is a real value to us as well in addition to the revenues.
No, thank you. What's the value of partnering with a third-party agency versus handling it in-house? Because you know, we work together as your third-party agency, but can you imagine if you had to take this in-house?
I think the value really is the resource, expertise, and speed to market. So those three factors are, I think, key. In fact, we at Conde Nast have a pretty good comparison, as we, for historical reason, running our own, for one brand, our own seal program in-house, as you know. And during the main sales window of that program, which is twice a year, the team works 24/7, flat out, can't focus on anything else. So imagine if you have half a dozen or so brands with similar programs, we wouldn't be able to do that, or we wouldn't be able to pay the attention unless we're sort of hiring, I don't know, 10 people and more to manage this. So what Wright's Media for us really brought to the table is the ability to sort of manage those peaks when these sales periods come into play, and provide an objectivity also from a third party. I mean, we all know when we talk to editorial teams, when you say something internally, people listen, but if someone external gives you feedback, that's always way more helpful. And then also the R&D that you do in markets, what are the new trends, where do we have to go? So all these are factors which are really important for us, and which is why we prefer working in this particular case with a third-party agency.
You're right. Thank you, Markus, for saying that, because I think one of the things that we do at Wright, which is so powerful, is really the consultative approach that we take with our brand partners. We do really know the trends, what's happening in the market in terms of content licensing because of our global portfolio of clients, and we're able to see what the buyers are interested in. I know, as an example, Markus, we recently were consulting with GQ in the US, because we saw an incredible trend from a fitness perspective, in particular men's fitness. And we were able to recommend that the editors consider maybe doing a GQ Fitness Award. Again, we are so concerned about the editorial integrity of all of our clients, and we only make these as recommendations for the editorial team to know and then act upon. And maybe you could talk just for a minute about the new GQ Fitness Awards, and we may be taking that to Condé Nast Britain as well.
You're absolutely right. I mean, there was a recommendation, and it was important that the editorial team is actually excited about it, and the editorial team has been excited about it, and then was very excited about it, sort of coming up what the framework for it is. And the feedback that we have received so far from the market is super positive. Traditional, maybe GQ isn't necessarily a fitness magazine, and there are a lot of competitors, but we have our own spin on it, and we certainly have our own editorial spin on how we look at fitness and how we look at fitness, a certain exercise, a certain product, fitness product. So when you guys came with that recommendation, it just made perfectly sense. But that comes back to that objectivity of the R&D that I talked before in you as well. Is sometimes you're too close to your own product that you don't see opportunities. You're not in the market all the time when it comes to these initiatives, and therefore I think it's always good to have sort of the partner on your side that points you sometimes in the right direction. Doesn't mean you need to take every advice and execute it, but clearly it gives you way more opportunities if you were doing it by yourself.
Thank you. John, I'm going to throw it back to you in the studio for questions for Markus and I.
Hi, well, thanks. That was really interesting, and welcome back. We've just got a few questions, really. One is related to Vogue for Business, and just whether you've done any B2B licensing deals. If I missed that in the talk, I'm sorry, or whether you've done any B2B licensing across anything else.
B2B in the sense of, because Vogue Business is really, it's not a consumer brand. No. It's a professional B2B brand. So I might be wrong, but I'm not sure that in that sense, sort of a B2B, it's a different market. I mean, it's not an endorsement marketing market in that sense.
Yeah, okay. Another question that's come in, we've just got a few, is are you seeing new players in the market, you know, telecom companies, brands, other people wanting to license their content, either through rights or directly to you?
I think telecom companies or networks, I mean, that is a sort of a different licensing part, which is sort of more the content syndication avenue. And we have been working with telcos, platforms all along. I mean, you can get our content or content syndication or access to our content even through Nexus, Lexis, and other sort of archive platforms. But again, that is sort of, that's the content, reading the articles versus the endorsement. And actually, frankly, I think if I would look at which of the revenue stream is more interesting, I think the endorsement licensing revenue stream is more interesting.
Right. Okay. And the last question came through. I think you answered most things in you're pretty comprehensive in your conversation. Was just about new opportunities and new markets. Whether you see, I mean, I know we talked a lot about the UK and there's obvious markets in the West, but are there any specific areas that you're looking to expand in or looking to see the opportunity in?
Together with Wright's Media, I mean, we're talking about Germany right now and see if we can replicate the success that we had in the US and that we hopefully have in the UK there. And I think then I will heavily rely on Michelle and her team to sort of identify what other market opportunities there are and what other avenues we can. I mean, Michelle, do you have to add? I'm sure you have to add something there.
I do, because Marcus, I recall during one of our conversations, you spoke about Germany needing to use a third-party agency, if I'm not mistaken, that they couldn't, the team that Marcus has in-house of sales in Germany can't sell the accolades and licensing of content because of rules and regulations around that. And maybe Marcus, you could expand a bit more, because I found that interesting. That was the first market I had heard that being the case.
You're right, and I'm sure there are other markets where there are strict rules around this. But independent from it, we found it out at the same time as we did our due diligence. But I think in general, it's important for us to keep our editorial integrity. I mean, for us, editorial integrity is paramount across all our titles. So that Chinese wall that we have created between commercial and editorial is quite solid and pretty high. We can't jump over that. In fact, I think if there would be sort of a crossover, it would undermine that the value of the content and endorsement. If the consumer doesn't trust us, the companies won't buy it, and we kind of would destroy that business. So having a third party, in your case, at arm's length, I think that even gives you more credibility, because you have no influence on the content. You will see the content after the fact, when everyone else sees it, and you will see the endorsements and our franchises and the winners also after the fact. Same as I will see it after the fact. I don't know it beforehand. And then you go through and do the sales part of the operation. So I think having a third party, while in some country it might be required by regulation and rules, I think in general is a good idea in this context, because it gives you that credibility that you're not doing something that crosses over between editorial and commercial.
I think you might be quite interested. I just got some analytics from James, and so you've got people tuning into this from Kenya, from South Africa. Where else do you say, James? Brazil, Mexico, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines. So you've got a few people from Japan, did you say? So you've got you've probably the broadest mix that we've had, I would say, geographically. So that's interesting stuff, I think. I'll send you all of those when we've eventually collated it. Well, look, I've got some more questions coming in, sorry. So this is from Richard Bean. So, hi, in the UK, we have fair use in copyright laws. Do such laws exist elsewhere, and how does this affect your endorsement licensing? I think you probably just answered that a bit, but
Michelle, do you want to answer that, or because I might have a rant over fair use?
Go ahead, Marcus.
Go on, rant. Ranting's fine.
Rant.
No, I think fair use is absolutely important. Actually, it's a very important element of editorial freedom. But I think when it comes to the commercial, I think fair use, for me at least, then goes slightly out of the window, because it's a commercial purpose and not an editorial or artistic purpose.
Michelle, anything to add, or?
I would agree. I would agree with Marcus completely. And as a former publisher, I think the crossing of church and state lines as well, and the fair use of it from a commercial perspective, Marcus was right on.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then one from Ashley, who says, what advice would you give to smaller companies? I guess this is one for you, Michelle, just starting out into content licensing.
Well, they can first of all contact me,
Yeah,
and I will. I can help guide them along. We work with all different types of companies, large corporations like Conde Nast, and smaller digital-first companies, as well as smaller print companies that are interested in getting into building a licensing business. And I always look at it that we come in at Wright Media and help you build a licensing business. So we take on clients of all different sizes, and as Marcus and I were chatting about, we're really also having a foothold internationally as well, and can help many international companies.
So my phone's just vibrating. Let me just hand it off to somebody else. How just very quickly, of course, anybody can get hold of Michelle at info@FIPP, or John or James at FIPP. But what's the best way to get hold of you at Wright's?
It's mmyers at wrightsmedia.com.
Okay, we'll put that in the chat box.
Perfect.
Now the other thing was from Kristen. Can you speak a little bit more? I guess this is one for you, Marcus, about the increases in revenues that you've seen over the last 4 years, or actually, Michelle, either of you.
I will say, as a former Condé Nast publisher, I know Marcus probably can't speak.
Probably won't answer that question. No.
To revenue increases, because it's a private company. So I will, I'll help you there, Marcus. But we can say probably that it has grown significantly year over year, with double, sometimes triple digit figures. And is an incredibly profitable piece of the business. I was part of the executive team at Conde Nast in 2016 when the decision was actually made to hand over the internal licensing business that we did to Wright Media. And sitting in the chair that I sit in now, it's incredible to see the trajectory. And I know that I made the right decision in voting to bring it to a third party. And to Wright's. So it's an incredible growth in revenue.
Excellent. Well, I think that's very encouraging. I mean, we need some good
Thank you there, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Okay, that's, what have I got here? Okay, just wondering if Marcus is seeing growing opportunities in the area of voice search in terms of endorsements. I don't quite understand that question. I hope you do. That's my last one.
Actually, it's an interesting proposition. I haven't heard yet the connection between. I mean, I assume whoever asked the question meant that if you ask your Alexa or your Siri, can you tell me what is the best XYZ product, that then it will kick in a endorsement. I think that's an interesting opportunity. And Michelle, we certainly should look into that, how we can pull that one off.
I like that idea.
Sorry, I've just thrown you a challenge there.
And,
well,
the fact is that we can. I mean, we have obviously video, and sometimes we can license video sequences as a sort of a pull quota endorsement, and we also have podcasts. So the opportunity would also exist to pull quotes from those podcasts.
Sure.
I was just thinking about podcasts, Marcus. You're absolutely right.
Well, look, guys, I haven't got any more questions here from the floor. It's been really, really interesting. I'd just like to thank you both, particularly, Michelle, for coming on and representing Wright's, and Markus for coming back again twice in one day. So Conde Nast have been very well represented all round today, which is great. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Marcus.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Michelle. Bye-bye.
Thank you.